Thank you for joining with me. We are on section 11 in chapter 2, Right Defense and Release from Fear. Section 11 is the basic conflict. We are reading paragraphs 1 through 9, and this is day 44 in the Course Companion study book. Getting through this book, not getting through it, but reading A Course in Miracles, complete and annotated edition in 1 year. If you'll please close your eyes and join me in a prayer. Dear God, if left to my own devices, my perception will be skewed. I surrender to you everything that I think and feel. God, please take my past, plan my future, send your spirit to redeem my mind that I might be set free. May I be your channel, God, and serve the world. May I become who you would have me be. Do what you would have me do, go where you would have me go, and say what you would have me say, and to whom, God? God, please enable me to set aside everything I think I know, which is a lot, about everything, which I think I know everything about, and allow me to have an open mind and a new experience, most especially with this book, with you, dear God, with myself, and with others, and definitely with this world. God, please give me your vision today as I read this and going forward. I love you, God. Amen. Section 11, the basic conflict. You are willing to accept primarily what does not change your mind too much and leaves you free to leave it quite unguarded most of the time. You persist in believing that when you do not consciously watch your mind, it is unmindful. It is time to consider the whole world of the unconscious or unwatched mind. This will frighten you because it is the source of fright. You may look at it as a new theory of basic conflict if you wish, which will not be entirely an intellectual approach, because I doubt if the truth will escape you entirely. 128. We believe our thoughts have hurt us and made us vulnerable. We then project our thoughts, what our thoughts have done to us, onto God, Jesus, and others, making them appear to be the destructive agents to which we are vulnerable. And yet it's just our thoughts. How simple. The unwatched mind is responsible for the whole content of the unconscious, which lies above the miracle level. 129. Wait, where'd I get there? Okay. Gosh, I'm sorry. 128. I just read 127. But I do like that. The basic conflict is a term emphasized by neo-Freudian Karen Horney, who saw it as the conflict between the opposed strategies of moving forward compliance, moving against aggression, and moving away from detachment. The basic conflict in Freudian thought, at least as identified by comments later in this section, is between the hedonistic id and the moralistic superego, a conflict mediated by the Freudian ego. The final part of this sentence is using intellectual approach to describe something you regard as abstractly true without considering that it may be personally true of you. So then an unwatched mind is responsible for the whole content of the unconscious, which lies above the miracle level. 129. The unwatched mind, then, is not responsible for the content of the miracle level of the unconscious, but only that which is above the miracle level. All psychoanalytic theorists have made some contribution to the truth in this connection, but none of them has seen it in its true entirety. Jung's best contribution was an awareness of an individual versus collective unconscious levels. He also recognized the major place of the religious spirit in his Shema. His archetypes were also meaningful concepts, but his major error lay in regarding the deepest level of the unconscious as shared in terms of content. 130. This is a reference to Jung's archetypes, which he viewed as the contents of the collective unconscious, rejecting the tabula rasa, sorry, I want to make sure that was plugged in, or blank state theory of the mind. Archetypes, sorry, it's hard to change these very thin pages. Archetypes are psychic dispositions, patterns, ideas, or images that are present in everyone. From these templates, the basic themes of human life emerge. Examples of archetypes would be birth, death, mother, father, God, ego, trickster. The deepest level of the unconscious is shared as an ability. I'm going to repeat that. The deepest level of the unconscious is shared as an ability, 131. In other words, the collective unconscious is not filled with particular ideas and images, archetypes, but with raw, unformed, miracle-working ability or miracle-mindedness. As miracle-mindedness, the content or the particular miracles which an individual happens to perform does not matter at all. They will, in fact, be entirely different, since I direct them because I make a point of avoiding redundancy. Unless a miracle actually heals, it is not a miracle at all, 132. The implication is that if miracles were redundant, if they kept occurring in the same forms, they would lose their psychological impact and thus their ability to heal. The content of the miracle level is not recorded in the individual's unconscious because if it were, the miracle would not be automatic or involuntary, which we have said repeatedly that it should be, 133. See footnote 105 for references to the miracle being involuntary. The notion that specific miracles, particularly expressions of love to brothers in need, being stored in the individual's unconscious, would compromise the automatic or involuntary nature of miracles. Seems to mean that those old miracles would tend to pattern new miracles after themselves, rather than allowing the new ones to be inspired involuntarily. However, the content is a matter for the record, which is not within the individual himself. All psychoanalysts made one common error in that they attempted to uncover unconscious content. You cannot understand unconscious activity in these terms because content is applicable only to the more superficial unconscious levels to which the individual himself contributes. This is the level at which he can readily introduce fear and usually does. Freud was right in calling this level preconscious and emphasizing that there is a fairly easy interchange between preconscious and conscious material, 134. Freud's preconscious includes thoughts that aren't conscious at a given time but aren't repressed, so can be called into consciousness. Jesus here seems to be possibly extending the preconscious to include the entirety of the Freudian unconscious. He was also right in regarding the censor as an agent for protection of consciousness from fear. 135. In Freudian thought, the censor, in order to protect the ego, blocks unconscious wishes from consciousness during the day, and during the night transforms these wishes into disguised forms that appear in dreams. His major error lay in his insistence that the preconscious is necessary at all in the psychic structure. If the psyche contains fearful levels from which it cannot escape without splitting, its integration is permanently threatened. It is essential not to control the fearful, but to eliminate it. It is essential not to control the fearful, but to eliminate it. Here, Rank's concept of the will was particularly good, except that he preferred to ally it only with humanity's own truly creative ability, but did not extend it to its proper union with God's. 136. Otto Rank was one of Freud's closest colleagues until their break in 1926. Rank was the only early psychoanalyst to emphasize the centrality of will in human psychology. In Rank's system, we are not merely determined by unconscious and biological forces, but determine ourselves throughout our will. He thus emphasized the importance of choice and moral responsibility. The role of the will in artistic creation and the function of the will in creating one's individual self as differentiated from parental influence. He also emphasized will conflicts, a term that Jesus has just used in section 10, such as the conflict between the will to separate and the will to unite. His birth trauma, another valid idea, was also too limited in that it did not refer to the separation, which was really a false idea of birth. 137. In The Trauma of the Birth, 1924, Rank put forward the idea that the shock of separation from the mother at birth is the basis of all anxiety and neurosis. Physical birth is not a trauma in itself. It can, however, remind the individual of the separation, which was a very real cause of fear. The idea of will therapy was potentially a very powerful one. 138. Rank's will therapy, originally published as two works in 1929 and 1931, published in English as Will Therapy in 1936, emphasized choice, responsibility, and action. He said, thus, my concept allows for operation of the patient's own will as the most constructive force in the therapeutic process. He taught that neurosis is due to poor will organization and that patients can regain their authentic will through analysis in a process of self-creation. Where was I? So the idea of will therapy was potentially a very powerful one, but Rank did not see its real potential because he himself used his mind partially to create a theory of the mind, but also partially to attack Freud. His reactions to Freud stemmed from his own unfortunate acceptance of the deprivation fallacy, which itself arose from the separation. This led him believe that his own mind's creation could stand only if the creation of another's fell. In consequence, his theory emphasized rather than minimized the two-edged nature of defenses. This is an outstanding characteristic of his concepts because it was outstandingly true of him. He also misinterpreted the birth trauma in a way that made it inevitable for him to attempt a therapy whose goal was to abolish fear. The reason Rank is criticized here for the therapeutic goal of abolishing fear may be that, as the next paragraph implies, fear can only be abolished by undoing the miscreation that caused it. Until then, the presence of the fear has a therapeutic value as an indicator of its underlying cause. This is characteristic of all later theorists who do not attempt, as Freud did in his own form of therapy, to split off the fear. No one as yet has fully recognized either the therapeutic value of fear or the only way in which it can truly be ended. When you miscreate, you are in pain. The cause and effect principle here is temporarily a real expeditor. Actually, cause is a term properly belonging to God, and effect, which should also be capitalized, is his sonship. This entails a set of cause and effect relationships which are totally different from those which humanity introduced into miscreation. And that is where we will stop in Chapter 2, Section 11, Day 44, the basic conflict, paragraphs 1 through 9. And this is Emily Bennington and Robert Perry's writing. Overview. This section states that above the miracle level, which is our root impulse to express love, there is a whole world of the unconscious or unwatched mind that is the source of fright. This is one of those sections in the course that spends a fair amount of time discussing psychology, which may or may not be of interest to you. Either way, it seems the overarching theme here is that we leave our minds quite unguarded most of the time, and Jesus is asking us to pay close attention to our thoughts. While he recognizes that we cannot engage in constant thought watching, the idea is that we can guard our thinking far better than we do at present. How well would you say you do this? In other words, how well do you strike a balance between consciously watching your mind and rejecting egoic, for example, wrong-minded or loveless thinking? The key passage. An unwatched mind is responsible for the whole content of the unconscious, which lies above the miracle level. And that is where we stop on Day 44. Thank you for joining with me. The basic conflict, paragraphs 1 through 9. I love you. Thank you.